Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM. Joined by Rachel Dory and John Daigle, I'm Olivia, Harlan, Dekker. Let's start with the 49ers, who have lost 3 straight after looking in control of the NFC with 5 consecutive wins to start the season. You know, that latest loss has caused major shifts in the futures market. 49ers odds to win the Super Bowl dropped 20%, now at 6-1. Last week, they were the favorite to win the NFC. Now they're at plus 250, behind, of course, the Eagles. They're still a huge favorite to win the NFC West, but the odds have dropped over 50%. 2 weeks ago, their win total was at 12.5. Now it's back at 11.5 where it opened, but it's juiced to the under. Rachel, are you buying any of these 49ers futures at these new prices?
At plus money, I am taking the 49ers to get over 11.5 wins. I think when you look at their strength of schedule, they've got Arizona, they've got the Rams, they've got the Commanders, and they've got the Buccaneers. I think at that, from where they're playing right now, you have to think that they're going to get 4 wins of 4. But then they've also got Jacksonville, Seattle twice, Baltimore, and then they've got the Eagles. And I think at a minimum, you're looking at 3 or 4 wins, if not more from that. It is conceivable that the 49ers win out. Obviously, there's a question about Deebo Samuel here, but I look at it, and when I run my model, it's still got the 49ers coming out with 13 wins. And so to me, at plus money, 11.5, I like this a lot.
John, do you like the win total as well, or any other buy low opportunities there?
I think the market is fairly correct for the 49ers, honestly. And when Rachel says 11.5 wins, that actually leads me to my only long shot, and it's very long, but I think the only way I would bet it is by sprinkling on Brock Purdy to eventually finish as MVP at plus 3,000.
Oh.
Purdy's only 6 touchdowns behind Tua right now. But think about it. If the Dolphins win in Germany against the Chiefs on Sunday, you would think that causes Patrick Mahomes' MVP odds to dip a hair, leaving the field even more wide open. And as much as he struggled in his last 3 games, Purdy is still leading the league in yards per attempt, averaging 9.1. And if San Francisco does get over those 11.5 wins, and it's because Purdy's helping them in the secondary, maybe we see Purdy take home MVP and they leave Offensive Player of the Year to Christian McCaffrey. So that's the way I like betting it, just for long shot odds.
Okay, you're forgetting about Tyreek Hill. You're forgetting about all these other Offensive Player of the Year candidates as well. But I'm with you on McCaffrey. I like McCaffrey there. Let's stick with him then, because he leads the NFL with 652 rushing yards. But will he finish the season with the most? John, I think I know where you stand. CMC is still the favorite at plus 150, even though he's averaging less than 50 rushing yards per game over the last 4. McCaffrey struggles on the ground, but Travis Etienne Jr. is trending up, averaging over 80 yards per game in his last 4. His odds have moved almost 70%, giving him the second best odds. DeAndre Swift and Derrick Henry's odds both improved from last week as well. John, who are you backing to finish with the most rushing yards?
McCaffrey and Etienne should be the favorites. They're right up there, but I think Derrick Henry at plus 850 are still pretty great odds, because now we might sprinkle in an explosive passing game with Will Levis. It's only 1 game, but maybe he opens it up a little more for Henry to face fewer 8-man boxes. And if that's the case, we know the usage is still there for Henry. He's still averaging 17 carries per game. And remember, for his career, he's averaged 6.1 yards per carry and 115 yards per game against the Texans in particular. And they haven't played the Texans just yet. They still have them twice on their schedule. So there is a path here for Henry to explode over the second half of the season and lead the league in rushing.
Absolutely there is. Rachel, which running back are you betting on?
I'm going to bet on Christian McCaffrey, but I'd also like to say I completely agree with John. There is a ton of value on Derrick Henry to lead the league, because they still do have to face the Texans twice. They also have to face the Colts and the Panthers. And so when you look at it, I like Christian McCaffrey, even though he's not the most valuable player on the board. He is the most explosive offensive player at the running back position in the league, and he's going to get a bye week to get completely healthy this week. And so when you look at it, Christian McCaffrey built into that San Francisco 49ers offense. You look at who they have to face. They're not facing a ton of rushing defenses that are super special outside of the Philadelphia Eagles. And so I think there's a scenario here where you look at it, and maybe if San Francisco is leading in a lot of these games, they're just handing the ball off to McCaffrey and saying, do your thing. And so there is a scenario here where, yeah, Christian McCaffrey is probably going to get a ton of touches leading into the playoffs to kind of keep him warm. If you're looking at value, it's probably Derrick Henry, but I think the most likely scenario here is Christian McCaffrey because of the level of the offense and the defenses that they're playing against.
Okay, well, we've already touched on a couple big games that are happening this weekend. Let's narrow in on some of the Week 9 storylines and discuss who the public is betting on. It's no surprise, the public is loving this great game on tap Sunday night between the Bills and Bengals. 73% of early bets are on the Bengals to cover the spread after they won easily against CMC and the San Francisco 49ers. Rachel, are you fading the public and going with Josh Allen in this one?
It's tough to say, Olivia. I think this game is going to be one of those, I'm just going to watch it to enjoy it, because the last time the Bills played the Bengals, 0 people enjoyed watching it. And so when you look at, I've done a lot of studying on athlete emotions and the tragedies and things like that. And when you're playing an emotional game, it's actually very difficult to bet on because it usually doesn't follow the models or the scripts that are associated with it. And so for me, I look at this, you have question marks about Josh Allen's shoulder and general health. You also have questions on how this game script is going to play out given the magnitude of what happened the last time these teams played. So when I look at it, this seems like a game where it's not about fading or backing the public. It's more about making sure that this is a highly entertaining game that everyone's just kind of going to get to enjoy, because these are two very talented teams that should put on just an absolutely fantastic show.
I like that approach. John, do you think the public's right here?
I'm putting money on it, for better or worse, because I think the Bengals side is the correct one with the public. Burrow came out of his bye clearly healthy, and that's the big question mark we had for him. But last week against the Niners, 10 of 10 for 13.5 yards per attempt under pressure, made some dazzling plays on tape coming out of the pocket as well. And for the Bills, although they handled their business against the Bucs on Thursday night last week, it's still been a defense that's been below average the past month without both Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano. 20th in yards per attempt allowed through the air, and 25th in 10-yard runs allowed too. So basically getting exploited everywhere now. I do like the Bengals. I feel dumb because I took it at -2 earlier in the week, and now we're getting a better number at BetMGM. So -1.5, I agree with the public.
I'm with you. I'm with the public. Well, it may not be as high profile of a game as the one we just discussed, but the public's choice is interesting with 75% of early bets on the Panthers, who just covered their first spread of the season last week when they upset the Texans. Their first win. Go Carolina. The Colts have given up at least 37 points in 3 straight games, but they're 4-4 against the spread on the season. John, are the numbers telling you to fade the public here?
I do not have enough confidence in the Panthers just yet to go along with the public. I do like what I saw from them out of their bye. They had a lot of interesting caveats they changed up in their offense under Thomas Brown. We know, for example, Gus Bradley has never played a snap on defense. He's never seen one that he doesn't like playing zone coverage with. And Bryce Young this year against zone coverage, unfortunately, has been dreadful. 25th in completion rate for 5.7 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Maybe the changes under Brown in their second game did actually change everything overnight and make Young more confident against zone defense too, but I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not comfortable betting the Panthers just yet.
Yeah, new play caller, new look offense. There's a lot to get excited about. Can you tell this is going to be my best bet of the weekend too? I'm pumped about this one. Rachel, which side are you on?
I am also fading the public here on the Colts, and John laid out a lot of really good reasons. And I look at this, I think this is a play where you're probably going to get a Bryce Young interception because of that zone defense and his struggles against it. But if you look at it, there is just not enough of a kind of sample size to say that the Carolina Panthers are going to be capable of stopping the Indianapolis Colts to the point where Bryce Young can produce enough offense. Yes, the Colts have given up a ton of points, but when you look at this, this is a scenario where there just hasn't been enough sample size to say that Carolina can produce the 37 odd points. Yes, Carolina's defense is better, but you look at Jonathan Taylor, he's back, and Carolina's defense does struggle against the run. Jonathan Taylor is a special running back. He is somebody that could have an absolutely explosive game, especially because he hasn't played as much as everybody else has in the league. And so you look at this, there's just not enough there for me to say I'm comfortable backing the Panthers after a basically game-winning field goal against the Houston Texans. It's just not enough to say I'm confident in them beating Gardner Minshew and the Indianapolis Colts, especially with an improved running game.
Hater, hater. Let's continue diving into week 9, but get back to the biggest games of the week, the really fun ones to talk about. We got Cowboys and Eagles. They face off for the first time this season with the Eagles as a 3-point favorite. But over the last 10 meetings, the Cowboys have dominated. Not only have they won in 7 of the last 10, but they've covered the spread in 7 of them as well. Points have also been a common theme in these games, with 7 hitting the over. Rachel, which trend are you following? The Cowboys covering the spread or the game going over?
I am going to back the over. I think you look at this, and Philadelphia is begging teams to throw the ball against them. They absolutely have a fantastic run defense, but they've really struggled to defend the pass. And if you look at their matchup last year against the Cowboys, they basically played everybody back and allowed Dak Prescott to just consistently hit CeeDee Lamb for short passes that he was able to get yards after catch for. And so I look at this, you are begging both teams to throw the ball. A.J. Brown has been ridiculously good this year. I even like Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert's been somewhat up and down. But when you're talking about teams that say, hey, don't run the ball against us, please just throw the ball, you've got Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. They're more than happy to do that with the receiving cores that they have. I think this could be a scenario where we're seeing north of 50 points here. I've got this modeled out at 49.6, which is at least a couple of points of value, but I would not be surprised if this went way over that number, given how the defense plays out.
John, how do you see this playing out?
For all the reasons mentioned, that's why the Cowboys plus the 3 points is one of my favorite bets of the entire weekend. Having said that, a lot of times when I'm asked about what I think coaches will do, will they be rational? The answer is no. A lot of times coaches get in their own way. And so for that reason, although I like the Cowboys, I do think the game has a great chance to go under. We know that, yes, they can have success through the air, but they have been a slower-paced offense, one of the slowest offenses in the league, and they have still leaned on the run game despite Tony Pollard's ineffectiveness to this point of the year. So far, opponents have passed on the Eagles at a league-high 74% rate, but will the Cowboys do that, or do they want to slow this game down and hope their defense and special teams still keeps taking over games? I'm not sure. I hope they get aggressive. I really hope that they go through the air, because that's how they'll have the most success. But I worry that they will not under Mike McCarthy. So I like the Cowboys, but I think the under could come into play here too.
Okay, that's the big game in the NFC. Let's get to the big game in the AFC. Set your alarm clocks. Get up early for this one. It's Chiefs and Dolphins. They have conflicting trends when it comes to totals this season. Miami and that high-powered offense, which leads the NFL in yards per game, points per game. They've hit the over in 5 out of their 8 games this season, while Kansas City, gosh, surprisingly, has only hit the over in 2 games this season. So, John, it's the highest total of the week at 51, and you can see why. But which trend do you see continuing in this game?
Really excited, and I do like the over in this one, if only because we still have many question marks about the Dolphins' defense. They've only been tested 3 times, really, all year. And in those games, Justin Herbert and the Chargers reached 34 points in the season opener. Josh Allen drowned them, remember, with 48 points. And then Jalen Hurts just a couple weeks ago, even through his knee injury he suffered in that game, 31 points for the Eagles. Now Patrick Mahomes coming off a flu game where he had literally the worst game by all metrics of his entire career, and he's removed from it, traveling overseas now. So I like the Chiefs to get it done. And more importantly, as good as the Chiefs' defense has been with Chris Jones coming back since week 2, they've still struggled against the run. That's how the Broncos took advantage of by giving Javonte Williams 30 touches last week. And now this Chiefs defense with Chris Jones is still allowing 4.4 yards per carry allowed to opposing running backs. The Dolphins, their explosive passing game opens up their explosive running game. So in giving their running backs 27 touches per game, I think we get here in a lot of ways for both offenses, and I like the over.
Nothing like getting up for another game and getting on an international flight as you're still fighting off the flu. That sounds absolutely horrible to me. I'll be in Frankfurt. Rachel, we were just talking off the air that you have a flight booked to Frankfurt. You just haven't decided if you're getting on it yet or not. So if you're in the stands, are you going to be seeing an over and under with me? Which one?
I think it's probably a no bet for me because, one, I might be attending the game and I never bet on games that I attend, but I do lean towards the over. The one thing I have concern about here is going through and researching, one, travel, especially overseas, and how it impacts players and how they play. You do see a bit of a dip in performance. Now you tack on the fact that Patrick Mahomes, the most important player for the Kansas City Chiefs, is under the weather and having to fly on what is about a 9-hour flight. The impact that can have on things like dehydration and repair of muscles is incredible. It can be severe. And so this is kind of one of those situations where I do think there is a path for Miami to put up points. And because their defense is not all that great, there is a path for Kansas City to put up points as well. But until we kind of have a better picture of just how recovered Patrick Mahomes is, it's very hard for me to back any kind of number or anything in this game, because you just don't know what the impact of the sickness and the travel has on Patrick Mahomes, but also on the teams just as a whole. So it's really hard to say. I'm leaning either way. If you had to pick a side, I would be with John here, and I would take the over.
And you can't bet it because you'll be there with me. Okay, it's time for primetime props. We're going to share our favorite prop in either the Sunday night or Monday night game. Rachel, why don't you go first on this one as well?
I will take Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing TDs. We just discussed the Bills-Bengals game, and one of the reasons I'm backing this is Joe Burrow does look a lot more healthy now, and he's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in his last 3 games, including 3 last week against the San Francisco 49ers defense. You look at this, the Buffalo Bills are without Tre'Davious White, they're without Matt Milano, and they have not looked the same since those players have gone down, and they've consistently been getting worse over the past couple weeks. I like Joe Burrow here to be able to take advantage of a depleted Buffalo Bills defense, and while the Bengals may or may not win, I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think he at least gets 2 touchdowns, if not 3.
Fantastic game. I like it. John, which primetime props catching your eye?
For the quarterback on the other side of that game, I do like Josh Allen over 27.5 rushing yards, because there was a big question mark about why they weren't using Allen to run the ball much, probably to keep him healthy and that first month and a half of the season. But since that time, with so many injuries in their offense, they've had no choice but to unleash him. And now, back-to-back season highs with 7 carries per game. We saw on Thursday night, their first game without Dawson Knox, not only opening it up for the second highest rate of 3 wide sets on offense, but also a season high 3 design carries for Josh Allen too. And that's how he reached 41 rushing yards. So I think it's just now an entirely different Bills offense we're going to see over the second half of the season. And that includes Allen using his legs much more often. I like the over on those rushing yards.
I like that too, and perfect explanation. Before we wrap up the episode, we're going to give you our blue chip bets, aka our best bets. It's anything we love. It can be spread, money line, total, prop. It can be whatever sport you want. Rachel, what is your blue chip bet?
Okay, so I'm going to stick with football. We're not going to go off the board here with hockey or anything like that. There's no more baseball. I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor over 64.5 rushing yards. My model has him projected for 81.6, and so you're getting a lot of value there. And the reason that it's got him projected for that much, one, there is a rest factor here. He has played less games than almost any other player in the NFL. But 2, yes, Carolina has a really good defense, but it's mainly been against the pass. And so you look at this, Gardner Minshew got a little bit banged up last week, and when they rely on Jonathan Taylor, he's been really good for them. And Carolina has had issues the past couple weeks stopping the run. So I think Jonathan Taylor has a chance to not only go well over this number, but also be the touchdown target in this game. I like him at anytime touchdown at plus money and over 64.5 rushing yards. I think this is a great spot for him.
John, are you sticking in the NFL? What's your blue chip bet?
During football season, I don't have time to watch anything else. I'm just a boring person. So yes, I'm sticking with the NFL. And you know why we bet? Because otherwise you wouldn't watch Commanders and Patriots. If I wasn't trying to pay my mortgage, there is no reason to have this game on the TV. But I like the over because we are trying to make rent here. And that's because everyone has had success against this Commanders defense outside of Josh Dobbs in week 1. Since week 2, quarterbacks have averaged 290 passing yards and 2.5 touchdowns. That includes Tyrod Taylor off the bench, who had 269 and a couple touchdowns a couple weeks ago. Even Desmond Ridder, who got benched this week, went over 300 yards against them 3 weeks ago. And now, no Montez Sweat or Chase Young. I think it's Mac Jones' turn, and we've seen, given the volume for the Commanders, somehow averaging a league high in dropbacks per game, that their offense gets there weekly anyhow. So I like points in this one quite a bit, and that's my favorite bet of the week.
Okay, well, that wraps it up for us. Danke Shane to both of you, too. Thanks for watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week. Auf Wiedersehen.